On behalf of the Executive Board, Edward Francis, William Malek, Andres Fortino, Marie Steinman, Nellie Duffy, who by the way is in Russia and do a great job there, Richard Smith, Kathleen Ball, Deborah Grail, Therese McNicholas, Mike McNeil, and our dear friend Jim Vossler, who is here somewhere. Oh, there he is, yep. I want to say a few words of thanks to you for coming to Norfolk, or for you being here, living here. It's marvelous to see you and to be able to visit this wonderful place. So also thanks for bringing a friend with you and to experience the 1997 Harvest class. I also want to say welcome to all our members on the phone patch in America, in Europe, in Africa, in Mexico, Central and South America, Asia, Russia, New Zealand and Australia. I heard that we have over 30 different countries present at this moment in time. They are all connected at this moment. So welcome to the Harvest class. And of course, last but not least, I want to say thanks to all our beloved staff present here and in Corwing Springs, who are all working very hard behind the scenes. Some are far more visible, and to make this conference a great success. We also understand that those days today are working days, so I know that by Friday evening it will start beaming here. 3 months ago, we started our July conference in San Diego with the Executive Board welcoming you and giving you answers to the following questions. What's going on with our church? A lot of people are worried, what's going on? What's going on with Mother? And what's in it for me? Or what's in it for me as a teaching center or study group? So most participants give us feedback that they left the July conference with decent answers to those questions. And they told us that you also experienced the first taste of cultural change from fear to love. Dear friends, as months pass by, we start to get a far better picture of where we are as an organization and where we want to be, individually, as a teaching center and as an organization in the near future. But in order to do so, we held surveys, we talked and listened frequently to our messenger, to the elders, to our staff, that's the internal part, and then externally to you as a result of the surveys. And we know that we absolutely have to start increasing and improving our communication with our teaching centers, the study groups, the families, and individuals in the field. That's very clear. Even among staff, we got 3 times when we had staff meetings the last month, let's say, people were saying communication, communication, and communication has to improve. And we will start working that by all means. But it also became very clear that in the midst of all this chaos, we are strongly guided and supported by the Holy Spirit and the Ascended Masters, who help us to walk with great speed into our new directions. It was in May 95 that we started our re-energizing process with the creation of the following mission statement. Our mission is to publish and apply the teachings delivered by the Ascended Masters to their messengers, Mark Clare Prophet and Elizabeth Clare Prophet, and their anointed successors, in order to restore the original one-on-one relationship between the soul and God and to liberate the souls of planet Earth. At that time, now more than 2 years ago, the workshop group, of which by the way 50% are now elders, strongly believed that the Church's highest goal should be the publishing of our teachings. Our thinking at that time was partially influenced by the Fraser Young study, which our church did in 1994 till 95. This study, as we now realize, was mainly focused on the question, how can we best promote and sell our books and products to the world? Our thinking was then still based on the industrial age produced market concept of we write books the way we used to write them, and the right people will surely buy them. Meanwhile, the world has dramatically changed, and we know now that in the actual information age, we are dealing with a consumer's market concept. This requires us to ask our members the following questions. What products and services do you really need, and how do you need them? It requires an even more in-depth study to discover what the actual needs and interests are of the possible millions not yet contacted and possibly very interested light bearers or seekers. This new model helped us to change our thinking from an internal focus or pleasing the boss to a customer focus, with other words, pleasing our members, our teaching centers and study groups, and the seekers. The information age, with its far more value-driven and knowledgeable employees, inspired us to change our culture from controlling our employees, teaching centers and study groups, to empowering them. With other words, we give far more responsibility and authority, and in return we expect more accountability. Now that's only at this moment in time happening in our staff. It starts to happen. In July '96 we started to put in practice the first steps of our 36 change process. And I don't know how many people have seen in this room the 36 steps. Can you please raise your hands? So a lot of people have seen them, some people not. Let me just quick go through it and say where we are. Because now we are 15 months later, and we should all know where exactly we are in the process. So if we can have the first slide. We started 2 years ago with our mission and vision, and that was a very, very slow process. It took us about 6 months before we had the mission and vision in place. And then we start talking about the principles and values which are in place. And then about half a year later, in February 1996, we did a study of the organizational climate. And it was in April, we had the critical success factors in place in '96. And number 5, the organizational goals, the strategies, 5 and 6, they were in place, let's say, close to 1996, the months of May and June. And when I came on board, the process started going faster and faster, and so we developed the core processes. We developed a new structure that was announced in July in a conference, the new structure. And then we had a big transition period, and I don't need to talk about that. Shock, denial, anger, and all the stuff like that with our employees about all the changes taking place. And we are only talking now about one element of the 5 we are working on at this moment in time. We are talking about church headquarters. So in the July class, it took us another year to find out about our corporate culture, and we speak about it later on a little bit. That was in the July class when we came forward, and we spoke about building a new culture, and I think all of you have those little booklets now. That was the work of 1 year with the elders. And ultimately, we had also for the July class our business plan in place. For the first time in the history of the organization, we developed a business plan for this church. And this month, in the end of October, we will have our performance management system in place, a 360-degree kind of evaluation, where for the first time we are changing our performance evaluation rather than focusing on the people, more focus on what are the outputs and the outcomes that we produce. How can we go back now to the people in the field and say, look, we received your tithing, thank you very much, and that's what we give you back. So that's going to be a dramatical change. And so all of us are working very hard on delivering 3 times giving you back what you give to us. So that's the first step in the organizational level, and we are doing very well there. So we are almost done. 1 month from now, or 2 or 3 months from now. Performance management, by the way, is an ongoing kind of situation. We have rounded up that first stage. And then with the help of our dear friend William Malek, we are now, and don't mistake myself when I say William Malek, I want to mention all the people because everyone is working very hard at that. But it's William's passion, it became his passion in his life to talk about the process level. And when you see him talking, you can feel the passion and see the passion over there. So in the January conference, for the first time, we worked on the process level. We came to you and we start involving you in the surveys and say, what do you want? What do you need? What is that you want? So that's number 1, customer delight. And just for information, William just rounded up the first session, that's number 3, process re-engineering. He started with the training of our process, and that process called customer delight. We have 4 processes. It's one of the 4 processes is customer delight. So William just started training those people, and now they are ready for re-engineering. In other words, for dramatical change in that area. And we all know that we have to make these dramatical changes. We are ongoing doing benchmarking, finding out what's the best processes that there are in other organizations and how can we learn from those ones and bring them into our organization. And at the same time we are doing, like we spoke, the process engineering. That's point number 3. We have already in place a process business plan, that's done. We have also number 5, the process strategies, and we have number 6, the process action plans. It took us 3 months to work very decently on that. In the last 3 months we have been focusing on those action plans. What can we do with the amount of money we have and what can we give back to you? So that's done. So it's not yet done. The plans are in place, so we have to still put them in action. We have a full 9 months time now to make those action plans realities. So we have to start doing project management now, because once you have the action plans, you know what to do, then you have to know how you lead projects. That's one of the next steps. We started some teamwork, point number 8, and we have to teach people in servant leadership, still a dramatical cultural change as well. That's going on. And communications, in the month of November we will have, we'll start focusing on more and more communication with our staff. Remember, this is all going on in headquarters. And then ultimately we have to do all the engineering, all the different processes. We have 4 processes. We have also 4 strategic functions. And those strategic functions are point 11 there, support, systems, re-engineering. And then ultimately we'll have again a performance management. So that's going on the process level. So you see we are making constant progress over there. And later on I show you the iceberg, because it sounds to you all, well, that's all good and well, but what do we see, right? What we are doing here is laying solid foundations for the future over here. I always use the example of reaching out and not having the people later on to follow up. What we are really trying to do here is to lay the foundations for the organization so that we really can survive and thrive in the coming years. Because there are fascinating things going on, I can assure you that. Then the individual level, that's the 3rd slide. People on staff are working on their personal mission and vision. We have, as a result of the open competitions, people have been thinking about their roles, and now with the action plans they can start thinking about their goals and priorities. They have the principles and values. We encourage them to think about it and let's see how much they are in alignment. Skills, knowledge and competences is one of the most challenging things for the coming months. And of course we need their commitment, and the moment you give, you create commitment, you create trust. And that's what we are building on, constant trust, so that we create commitment, so that we can come to accountability of people. Because, you know, empowerment is one thing. Empowerment, you give, let's say, you give authority and responsibility, and you respect back accountability. But people need to trust you, people need to believe in you. And ultimately, career resilience, that people can come in and out of this organization, and performance management. So these are the 36-step approach, and that's only one element of which we are working at this moment in time in headquarters. So let's go back. Your participation in our consumer surveys during and after the New Year's class in 1997 gave us the confirmation of the absolute need for radical organizational and cultural changes. You also told us that we no longer should ignore your questions and comments, such as, the teachings are fine for me, but what books, materials, or other things are available to get my children involved? Good questions. Absolutely, we have all children, and we want them to keep them in the teachings and to let them thrive in the teachings, and we should be an example for them. Or, my husband does not want to become a keeper unless he really understands what our church is standing for. Right, so we got these complaints over and over again, saying, let's see, we have this wonderful church, we have these wonderful teachings, but what are the steps? How can I get, what's the entry phase? What is really unique in our organization? Very important questions when we start doing outreach later on in the future. So, as a result of this feedback, the elders came to the conclusion that we had to shift our primary focus from the publishing to the application of our teachings. And that's why the last 2 conferences are called Practical Spirituality. Now, does that mean that we have to stop the writing and the publishing of our teachings? Absolutely not. We strongly believe that publishing our teachings in all kinds of ways is extremely important. Don't forget that about 20% of the actual members, you present over here, were attracted to the teachings through our books and pearls. But it also became very clear that the publishing should no longer be our only focus. So friends, guess what? Since then, since we started putting less focus on that one and having less people involved in that one, we have never written and published as much in a short period of time as in the last 10 years. Michael McNeil will show you the results of Modern and his teamwork during this conference, and Therese McNicholas as well, she might be part of that. Your information and insight forced us in April of this year to invite the new elders who were elected for the first time in a kind of open process, and to brainstorm on the following two questions. Who are we? And who do we want to be? The answer to the first question was a little bit odd, and it says, the answer was, we clearly give the impression that we are a church militant. We behave like an army perpetually fighting the Battle of Armageddon, and our news bulletins sounded very often like marching orders. So, this culture, going hand in hand with the shelter cycle and its fallout complications, started a decline in membership and tithing. With your help, via the surveys, and with the elders' input, it became obvious that we had to change our culture from fear to love. We had to become a more practical spiritual organization that understands the changing needs of our members and help them to create a more balanced life. And so we looked again at our vivid description, and let me read it to you. And we changed it, and it sounds like this now. We are a loving, worldwide spiritual community that helps people attain and sustain a one-on-one relationship with God, and that teaches a path of soul liberation. We celebrate and embrace the teachings of the Ascended Masters and the truths of the world's major religions. Our community is a church of divine love and an organization that learns and grows. We share practical tools that help people live a spiritual life. We nurture and support families. We promote and foster service to others based on the understanding that we are all one. The teachings and the culture of the Ascended Masters have transformed the world. Now, you know, vivid descriptions are always put in the future perfect tense. We use the most effective means to reach everyone on earth with the teachings of the Ascended Masters as brought forth by the messengers Michael Prophet and Elizabeth Clare Prophet and their anointed successors. We apply the teachings and use the signs of the spoken word and the violet flame to bring about self-transcendence and world transformation. We honor and cultivate the guru-children relationship with the Ascended Masters. Through our efforts, many on earth look to the teachings of the Ascended Masters as the pole star that brings them comfort, guidance, enlightenment, and a practical way of living a spiritual life. We live in a golden age of freedom, peace and enlightenment, where at least 51% of the people walk the earth as Christ at once. So the last months we have been working very hard with the elders at our membership situation, because it's so important that we know exactly what it is that people require to become a member of our church, and what are the limitations, and what is it that people doesn't like to become members of the church. Furthermore, we wanted to work on the correlated policies for the election of board members in teaching centers and study groups, and we had hoped to present you all that stuff today at this conference, but we never came that far. There are some specific reasons for it. Indeed, we now understand your needs, but what about the millions of people who are waiting to discover the violet flame and the Ascended Masters? How will we achieve our mission and make the Ascended Masters in the household word? All this will have a great impact on future membership requirements. Where are the millions of people in the world who could be interested in our teachings? How are we going to attract those new people? But far more important, how are we going to make them as fiery chillers as you are and help them to create that one-on-one relationship with God so that they can start becoming Christ at once and self-actualized persons? I know the answer. We indeed have the most profound teachings and a violet flame. But in order to attract those seekers, we better know first who those people are and what is going on in their world before we start reaching out and taking action in that direction. Dear friends, there is great hope, but it's also far more complex than we think. Dickens said it best in 1789. He said in his book, A Tale of Two Cities, it was the best of times and it was the worst of times. First of all, we are dealing at this moment in time with the complexity of three different generations who have total different requirements. The first generation, and most of our members are in that generation, are what we call the mature generation. People are born between 1909 and 1945. And I don't want to go in deep length, but there's something that you have to know about it. They value discipline, self-denial, and hard work. They emphasize the value of experience and wisdom. They trust established institutions and authority figures. They have earned the right to enjoy themselves now. And I will make some comparisons later on between the other two sections. Second of all, we have a generation what is called the boomers. Well, the boomers are born between 1946 and 1964. These born between 1946 and the early 50s still have a lot of common characteristics with the matures. But the top four elements for the boomers are: they want to self-actualize, they want to be in control, they want to have respect of other people, and they want to have a good marriage. And something, they want the relief from stress. Then the third generation are the Xers, born in 1965 to the present. They are far more realistic than the boomers. But they are also very afraid to indulge in drugs for fear of addiction, in sex for fear of AIDS, in marriage for fear of divorce, in careers for fear of downsizing, and they see everything as good and bad at the same time. And they love absolutely diversity. So, a few more comparisons between the matures, the boomers, and the Xers. Matures are called for duty. They define their ideas as duty. The boomers, individuality, and the Xers, diversity. In terms of celebration, the matures celebrate victory, the boomers celebrate youth, they want to be constant youth and youthful, and the Xers, savvy. Success because, for the matures, fought hard and won. The boomers were born therefore should be a winner. And Xers, we have 2 jobs and more. Style, for the matures, a team player. For the boomers, self-absorbed. And for the Xers, entrepreneurs. By the way, let's say about those matures, those Xers, more than 27% of the Xers are entrepreneurs. So people, self-starters, self-initiators. In terms of rewards, the matures, because you've earned it. The boomers, because you deserve it. And because the Xers, you need it. Work is for the matures an inevitable obligation, for the boomers an exciting adventure, and for the Xers a difficult challenge. Surprises in life for the matures, some good and some are bad. Boomers, everything has to be good. For the Xers, avoid it, it's all bad. It's very important that you know those distinctions because, let's say, when you talk to people, we have the tendency always to talk to them from our own perception. And when we do outreach, we go to the people with the same kind of mindset. Right? Let's go in outreach. That's what they're interested in. And what you see then? They're not even interested to listen to you. Why is that? Well, they have different kind of perception of life. Take, for instance, leisure. For the matures, reward for hard work. For the boomers, the point of life. They want to retire at the age of 50, less stress, and now start self-actualizing, right? For Xers, relief. Education for the matures was a dream. For for the boomers a birthright, and for the Xers just simply a way to go ahead. Future is a rainy day to work for. The boomers, now is more important. Give me tools for now. And Xers, uncertain but manageable. Managing money for the matures, save, for the boomers, spend, for the Xers, edge. Program means, for the matures, social program, for the boomers, cult deprogrammers, and for the Xers, software programs. And then go watch, for the matures, the best years of our lives, for the boomers, the big chill, and for the Xers, reality bites. So, quite a different approach we need to see depending on who we are going to talk to, what their needs are. But there is something far more fascinating going on. It's very interesting that we start to see, not only in these generations, let's say, take the last 100 years, but there is a radical cultural change taking place at this moment in time. And those radical cultural changes only happens every 1,000 years or twice in 1,000 years. The name of those that change is called, the new culture is called integral culture. And the people who are part of that are called the cultural creatives. And so, what is very interesting is that culture actually started about 100 years ago, or close to 100 years ago, with the Theosophical Society, with I Am Movement, and all these people like that. So those people and that generation clearly had an impact on this culture that is forming itself. Now, the average age of those cultural creators is 44 years old. They have a good income, and I will speak about American money, $52,000 per year. 27% are managers and professionals versus the average in normal average about 20%. 61% are women. Sounds familiar with our organization, right? These individuals are better defined by what is important to them. To them is important globalization, a love of travel, foreign places, and the exotic. Ecological sustainability, concern for the ecology, willingness to clean up the environment, and seeing nature as sacred. Incredible spirituality, personal growth, alternative healthcare, and also women's and community issues, concern about domestic violence, and very community-minded. Those cultural creatives are actually split up in two groups. One is called the core cultural creatives, and their main interests are psychology, spirituality, self-actualization, self-expression, love of the foreign and exotic, social concerns, and women issues. And then we have the green cultural creatives, let's say, who share the same values, but they are more focused on the environment. Important issues for them are, like I mentioned, 95% lovers of the foreign, 91% concerned about domestic violence, 91% community-minded, 88% ecological, nature 87%, 86% family, and let's go on, let's say in the same way with lifestyles, religious mysteries, divine interventions, relationships of all kinds. So you see, there is a new culture that is creating itself, and it's very unique and very special. The question is for us, before we go to the field, who are these people? Where can we find them? We know now, more or less, we have to study that far more in depth, and we should be able to contact those people, because they are looking for what we have, and we don't contact them. And if we approach them in the wrong way, they are going to run away from us. And we have to become the living examples of our teachings. So, fascinating things are going on. That's why we postponed, let's say, the membership approach for about 3 months. So we hope that by Christmas in the Christmas conference, we might have far more information about that. So what you see, what we are doing, if you look to the top, that is what you see at this moment in time, what's going on in this organization. And if you look to the bottom of the iceberg, that's what's really happening. We are really, like I said, forming a structure, a very solid structure, so that we can stay on top of that mountain over there and that we don't fall. We are focusing, and we start to focus as a result of, let's say, the questionnaires. We start to focus on our teaching center and study groups, and that's, of course, very important for yourself. So the first starts that we got was in Livingstone and in Glastonbury. Glastonbury, Livingstone is actually a very specific kind of thing. They are very close to the ranch. Don't forget that people living in Livingstone they are not upset, let's say, but nevertheless they are disappointed. They came to live there to have the quarterly conferences over there, and now we are moving out. We go to one place to another place, and they are quite disappointed. And so it's very important that we pay attention to them. And so we are now working with the Livingstone Teaching Center. We are going to Bozeman in the coming months. We are dealing with Glastonbury at this moment in time. You all heard about the Fee Simple. At the same time, you also heard about the land sale, and I think Maurice Steinman, in the later version of this conference, will talk a little bit more in depth about that. So that's all going on in this organization. But we're coming closer and closer to the teaching center and study groups. So we want you to be prepared for us, because once we have the study behind us, we can give you far more information. And by the way, we are going to have, I think it's on Saturday, if I'm not mistaken, Saturday at 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock, at 8 o'clock from 8 till 12, we have a special session for the teaching center and study groups about re-energizing those teaching centers. Furthermore, like I said, SBI, teaching center, study groups, Glastonbury, Livingstone, and then we're also thinking very seriously about the formation of what we call a global organization. Very clearly, we are still thinking locally and acting locally, rather than thinking globally and acting locally. And that has to change, and that's on our agenda for the coming months as well. So, never a boring moment in this organization. Very fascinating things going on. Steering and rowing aspect, of course, is taking place. The rowing aspect doesn't mean that we are just going to unload ourselves and give it all to you. It means that we are going to help you, train your people, train ministers, train professionals in your field with your help, because it's fascinating that we are getting a lot of proposals from people in the field who are willing to help us now in their professions. And that's very welcome, and we really support that approach. So I hope that this conference is going to be a great, once again, a great conference for all of you over here present and on the patch. And we are sure that the future looks bright for this organization. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to meet with you here at this very special place on the East Coast. I've looked forward to being at Norfolk for many, many years, since I've lived on the East Coast since I was a child. So welcome to my heart. Welcome all of you on the patch. We have a wonderful presentation for you right now. I'd like to introduce to you Karanjit Sian, who is going to give us training in mantras and the use of the conch shell as a means of sending forth the power of sound to the entire universe, beginning with planet Earth. This is a very exciting event. We've prepared for it. We have the booklets. And so it is my sense, as God showed me many months ago, that until we all are giving these mantras and giving them well, that we will not be putting out the sound that has the power to disengage, because it is not right, it is not real, and it is not of God. And that we can create the sound that can manifest in us as the sound of the Word from the beginning with God. I also want to tell you that one of the precious moments in my life was many years ago when I asked Mark Prophet, what does the threefold flame look like? And when I asked him that, he gave me the answer, and the answer is on the screen. And so you are seeing on the screen right now your threefold flame, if your threefold flame is in balance. As I give you my lecture today, after Karanjit, I will talk to you about these three plumes and why they are so very, very important to the victory of planet Earth. So please now give a hand to our beloved Karanjit.
That was to Brahma, the first cause. That was to Vishnu, the second cause. That was to Lord Shiva, the third cause. Mothers asked me to make a small presentation. Today's presentation will be slightly bigger than small. And this presentation today is in two parts. The first part of my presentation is the dedication of this first day of the conference to one of the few of the ancient deities. The second part is going to be some background teachings on the Gayatri Mantra and its origin. So this day of the conference is dedicated to Lord Brahma, Lord Vishnu, and Lord Shiva. These three, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, they form the core, the trinity of Hinduism. Hinduism is the oldest living religion today. And why are we talking about it today? Because at our very core, we are all Hindus. Another name for Hinduism is Sanatan Dharma. It's the eternal religion. In fact, Hindus like to call their religion not Hinduism, they call it Sanatan Dharma. Sanat means eternal, Dharma is the path of righteousness. You can also see the origin of the name of Sanat Kumara here. Sanat means eternal. Kumar in Sanskrit means youth. So we have the eternal youth. Now what is unusual about the deities and Hinduism or Sanatan Dharma in particular is that it has no religious founder like other religions. The great truths of the Vedas, they were revealed to the 7 rishis, perhaps even by our Lord Sanat Kumar in the very beginning. Lord Brahma is the deity that is the creator or the creative force in our universe. Lord Vishnu is the great preserver. And Lord Shiva is the great destroyer or regenerator. Now these beings are deities, they personify the process of creation, living, and rebirth in our universe. Everything fits into one of these models. Even something as mundane as perhaps business process re-engineering falls into this, because there's a creation, there's a preservation, and there's a regeneration. Now, what do Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva mean to you? We should not look upon these deities as something which came out of the East and perhaps maybe a little bit foreign to our culture and upbringing, because as I said, the core truths of Sanatan Dharma, Hinduism belong to all of us. At a very core, we are all Hindus. Now, when you invoke the name of a deity such as Lord Brahma, Lord Vishnu, or Lord Shiva, you're not just invoking the name of a deity. What you're invoking is a cosmic principle represented by a deity. And there are untold hierarchies of light which stand behind the deity. So when we invoke the name of a deity, we are calling upon great masterful beings, hierarchies of light. It's almost like it's a concept of a shortcut. You invoke a simple name of a deity, and what you're invoking are pages and pages of names of cosmic beings, some of which we know of and some we have never heard of. So that's what the deity represents. So regardless of whether we know the name of the deity, regardless of whether we know who's the cosmic being or beings behind the deity, they all respond when we invoke the name of the deity. So when we offer devotions to Lord Brahma, which is the blue plume in that chart, what we are doing is we are paying homage to all of the creative processes of the universe, including something as simple as the flowers created by elemental life and systems of world created by Elohim. They all are encompassed by this principle of Brahma, principle of creation. So Brahma is this ball of fire out of which the universe began. He is also called Hiranya Garbha, which means Hiranya in Sanskrit means golden, Garbh means womb. So he's the golden womb from which the universe began. He's also called the Prajapati. Praja means people, Pati is Lord. So he's the Lord of the people he has created. That is, he's Lord of us. He's also called Pita Maha, which is an affectionate term for grandfather. So he's the grandfather of the universe. And that's a very interesting point, that in Hinduism, the deities are like your personal friends, and that's the role, approach we need to take towards these deities and perhaps other cosmic beings also. Yesterday I visited a Hindu temple in the area, and I happened to be the only person at the time when I was there. And the priest showed me around, he took me around to the deities, and he gave me some flower offerings, and I offered it to each of the deities, and he chanted his mantras. And what I noticed was something very interesting while I was doing that. I noticed that in this very physical process, a very simple process of giving something to the deity, it was almost like I was bonding to the God in the deities. And you have to offer a little bit of yourself in order for the deity to offer something back to you or pour themselves back into you. I believe that the human mind in many ways is somewhat simple, and we need to go through these simple actions. I think many of you are aware of what I'm talking about. I know many of you tithe, for example. When you tithe, you're pouring some of your substance, some of your being into the organization, and not just the organization, but the beings and the deities who are behind the organization. And in return, you get something tangible in return. Now, when we invoke the name of Lord Vishnu, we are paying homage to the great cosmic principle responsible for preservation of life. We invoke the light of all the avatars responsible for preservation of the path of the Dharma, the path of the Sangha, the path of truth, the path of righteousness. Vishnu represents the sun principle, the sun, just like Brahma represents the Father. He represents the Christ mind. In fact, you might even say that all Christed ones are incarnations of Vishnu to some degree or the other. We know the famous incarnations of Vishnu, such as Lord Ram, Lord Krishna, but all ascended masters are also incarnations of Vishnu. All cosmic beings are also incarnations of Vishnu. When we invoke Lord Shiva, we are invoking the activating principle of life itself, the breath of life. This breath of life is the Holy Spirit. In fact, if you observe yourself breathing, if you're standing in a line waiting to get dinner sometime, just observe yourself breathing. And you'll observe that your breath is a mantra. What you're going to hear is the falling sound. You'll hear, as you breathe in, you'll hear sho. And as you breathe out, you'll hear hum, sho, hum. Sho is you're breathing in Lord Shiva, the fire of Lord Shiva. When you say Hum, the breath goes inside you, it responds, reacts with your inner being, and comes out as Durga, as Parvati, as Kali, as the consort of Shiva. In fact, a whole breath cycle is a mantra. We just have to be in tune with the mantra which is already taking place in our being. So Lord Shiva is the Nataraja, the Lord of dance. Nat means dance, Raj means the ruler. So he's the ruler of dance, the dance of regeneration, dissolution of pralaya, which is the regeneration of the universe when the cosmos reaches a certain stasis or level of being. And it's also symbolized by mystics talking about the serpent swallowing its tail. So that's the process of regeneration for Lord Shiva. So what I've described are the roles of Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, but these deities are also inside you. For example, the threefold flame, which we see, are representations of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva inside you. So Shiva is the pink on the right, Vishnu is the center, yellow, and Brahma is the blue to your left. And they reside in the ocean of joy, the oasis of joy, you might say, called the Anand Khan, the source of joy. Anand Khan is the Sanskrit name for the secret chamber of the heart. What I would like to do next is move on to the second part of my presentation and give you some background teachings on the Gayatri Mantra. We have produced some beautiful sacred Sanskrit mantra booklets. They should be here any moment, but I will just give you a slight brief background on the Gayatri Mantra and chant that for you so you get the flame of the Gayatri Mantra, and we'll have more time tomorrow to get into how to actually intone those chants. Mother first presented the Gayatri Mantra during darshan at the beginning of this year, and many of you may have been there at the time. Shortly after that darshan, when the Gayatri Mantra was presented, Mother told me that she almost went into a state of samadhi listening to the sacredness of that sound. And what she said is that these ancient mantras, these Vedic mantras, they have the power to prevent planetary warfare if we learn to say it right. Shortly after that, Mother sent me to India on a trip where she told me to get a dozen or so of the highest mantras I could find. Now, the mantra booklet which you should have in your hand shortly is a collection of those mantras. What I ask is that if you could all get a copy as soon as it comes in. Now there is a certain charge for production and of the material, and I hope you'll all be purchasing that because we'll be using it throughout the conference. But later on, during Summit University, Mother clarified her statement about these mantras. What she said is that these mantras are important, but we should not forget our core essence of our violet flame decrees, which we know are also very helpful. So she said that these violet flame mantras and the ancient mantras should be given in a certain proportion. The proportion she came up with was the ratio was called pi. Pi is a mathematical constant, which is the ratio of the circumference of a circle to its diameter. It's always constant. And she related that to the circumference of the cosmic clock and the diameter going from the 12 to 6 o'clock line. And perhaps if you take Summit University again, you can learn more about that sometime later. What I would like to do is talk about how the Gayatri Mantra came about. The Gayatri Mantra is the holiest of the verses, the mantras in the Vedas. It is said that all the Vedas, the Rig Veda, the Atharvaveda, Samveda, and the Yajurveda all sprang from the Gayatri Mantra. So if you master this mantra and meditate on it, you have the seed, the kernel of all of the knowledge contained in the Vedas. That's what it means. The Vedas, as you know, are some of the earliest scriptures in the world today. There could be about 3,000, 7,000, maybe longer than that. People really don't know. Scholars are not in agreement as to how old the mantras are. The Gayatri Mantra is. Now in the Chandogya Upanishad, which is a dialogue between Lord Sanat Kumara and his disciple, the Narad Muni, we find the following utterance by Lord Sanat Kumara. This is what Lord Sanat Kumara tells Narad Muni. He says, Great is the Gayatri, the most sacred verse of the Vedas. Prajapati, the creator of all, rested in life-giving meditation over the worlds of his creation, and from them came the Vedas. He rested in meditation, and from those came the three sounds: Bhur, Bhuvaha, Swaha, which means the earth, air, and sky. So this then we find is the opening verse, the opening line of the Gayatri Mantra. That's how the opening line begins. It is said that the great sage Vishwamitra, which means the friend of the world, when he heard the Gayatri Mantra in his meditation, and this is the story about how he came to learn about the Gayatri Mantra, how he wrote it down. So as most stories go, this happened also a long, long time ago in a land far, far away. And there lived a king called Vishwamitra. Vishwamitra is now regarded as a great rishi, but before he became a great rishi, he was a king. He was a reasonably good king, as most kings go during those times. He had one problem at one time, and there was a drought in his land. And so there were very few rains, and so Vishwamitra was very much burdened, and he took to the forest with his soldiers and his attendants. And as he was going through the forest, he came upon the hermitage of a great rishi. This rishi is a Brahma rishi, which means he has the equivalency of Lord Brahma inside him. And this rishi was Vaishishth. Now, Vaishishth, this great Brahma rishi, he recognized the king, and he perhaps even knew the purpose of Vishwamitra's coming there, but he kept quiet. Vaishishth, he welcomed Vishwamitra, the king, and welcomed him to an evening meal. Now, Vishwamitra, the king, was somewhat embarrassed at this invitation because Vaishishth had just a simple hut in the forest, and he knew that Vaishishth, though he was a great Brahma rishi, would not be able to feed his entire small army, which is accompanying the king. So Vaishishth said, well, that's not going to be a problem. What he did was he chanted a sacred mantra, and out came a magical cow, a mystical cow. And the name of this mystical cow is Kam Dhenu. Kam means desire. Dhenu is the name of a cow. Dhenu is Sanskrit for cow. So this is the wish-fulfilling cow, which was created at the beginning when the oceans were churned by the gods and the demons. So this cow came, and Vishwamitra spoke to Kam Dhenu and said that he would like to have a feast prepared for the king. And tables just sprang up out of nowhere. They had great food, great drinks. Now during the meal, Vishwamitra, the king, he began to think, he said, no, it would be really nice to have this cow, because that would solve the problems of drought and perhaps other problems with his treasury and his financial department. So what Vishwamitra then told Vaishishth that he has this problem with his drought. And he also hinted that it would be really nice, it would be a fitting service for the cow, this mystical cow, to accompany Vishwamitra back to his kingdom and serve his people. Now, Vaishishth, he was a Brahma rishi, and he could read people's thoughts. Nothing was really hidden from him. So Vaishishth declined. What he said is that spiritual law does not permit an ordinary mortal to possess something as mystical and magical as this cow, Kam Dhenu, and you can understand why, because then you would not want to strive for anything. Everything is available to you. However, King Vishwamitra was intent on possessing this cow, and he offered much wealth in return for the cow. But the Brahma Rishi smiled, gently declined. Vishwamitra he was not used to hearing no, so he became a little bit angry, which is one of the problems of false Vishwamitra had, is that he was quick to anger. And he said that if Vaishishth did not part with this cow, willingly he would take it by force. So Vaishishth, the Brahma Rishi, smiled Vishwamitra got more angry, and he ordered his army to go and fetch the cow, possess the cow. The Brahma Rishi Vaishishth whispered a sacred mantra again to Kamdhenu, and she disappeared and reappeared some other place. So as soon as the king's men would go and try and catch this cow, she would disappear from where she was and appear some other place. And this kept on going for a while until they realized that, they couldn't catch the cow. So they said, well, let's go after Vaishishth. So Vishwamitra gave instructions to Vaishishth, Vishwamitra gave instructions to his people to go and capture Vaishishth. Now Vaishishth, what he did was, he also started disappearing or reappearing at different places. And the king said, okay, we will kill Vaishishth. So he had ordered his army to shoot bows, to shoot arrows and missiles at the Brahma Rishi. Brahma Rishi had a staff. He took out his staff, put it on his right side, and all the missiles disappeared into the staff. And then he said to the king, shall I swallow your army too? So the king knew he was defeated and he could not capture it, but what he realized was that what he thought was power was temporal power, and here was somebody who had spiritual power and resolved to get this power. So what he did was, he went back to his kingdom, surrendered his kingdom, gave it to his successor, went to the foothills of the Himalayas, and began doing great spiritual disciplines and practices to get the spiritual power. Now understand that his motive was still not pure, but he still wanted to get the spiritual power. And what happened then was that so great was his determination and his dedication to getting these spiritual powers that he went through great austerities, and fire and smoke began to come out of the place where he was practicing his austerities. So much so the gods became very concerned, because it was almost as if the elements themselves were melting with heat. And so Indra, he said, well, Indra is the chief of the celestials. That's Lord Indra, chief of the celestials. So he sent a test to Vishwamitra in the form of Minaka. Minaka was one of the most beautiful women you could ever imagine. And so he sent Minaka to Vishwamitra. And Vishwamitra was deep in his meditation, but here the chink of her anklets was called Ghunguru, as she walked, and he smelled this perfume. And a part of him wanted to continue with his meditation, but he said to himself that what he would like to do is open his eyes, find out who this person is, and then go back to his meditation. And as he opened his eyes, he was lost because of the beauty of Minaka. So Minaka sat next to Vishwamitra and said, what is your name, O powerful and handsome one? And Vishwamitra forgot all about his spiritual practice. And so he spent some time with Minaka for 2 years, completely forgot about his meditation. And later on, at the end of 2 years, he realized that he had lost track of what his original purpose was. So this time, what he did was, he swore to himself that he would not be tempted like that again. And he went another 1,000 feet up into the Himalayas, found another sacred spot, began his meditation all over again. And again, he rose to the same level of spiritual power, again for the wrong motivation. And this time, Indra sent another beautiful maiden to tempt him again. Now, Vishwamitra, at this point, he was deep in his meditation. He did not want to come out of his meditation, but the sound of the noise which this lady was making so much annoyed him that he opened his eyes in anger, and fire came out of his eyes and struck this beautiful damsel, and she was turned to stone. So he realized that he had once again failed this test. In fact, he had lost all the spiritual power he had obtained through his meditation and spiritual practice. And so what he did next, he was not about to give up. He went another 1,000 feet up into the Himalayas, and this time he went again into a deep meditation. Around about that time, there lived a king called Trishanku. Trishanku wanted to go to heaven in his physical body. So he sent word to Vaishishth, the Brahma Rishi, which I mentioned earlier, that he would like Vaishishth to perform a yajna, sacred fire ceremony, whereby this king Trishanku could ascend into heaven in his physical body. So when he went to Vashisht told him that's against spiritual law, your body is not prepared for such a journey, and he declined. Somebody heard about a very famous, powerful sage meditating in the Himalayas, which is no other than King Vishwamitra, and sent word to him that this is what the king would like to do, that he would like to ascend to heaven in his physical body. Now, Vishwamitra, the king who was meditating up in the Himalayas, when he heard that Vashisht could not accomplish this, he immediately came out of his meditation and said that, well, I will do it, to show that he could do it, even though the Vashisht could not perform this particular service. So what happened was a great fire ceremony was conducted, and during this fire ceremony, it was supposed to last for 3 days. On the second day, King Trishanku started ascending to heaven in his physical body. Lord Indra, chief of the celestials, spotted him just about when he was about to enter into heaven, and he quoted divine law that this is not possible and sent him down. Vishwamitra saw this happening, and he was very concerned. He didn't want to be shown up in front of the big audience which had gathered around, so he put up his hand. Now, all of his spiritual power went out and stopped the king from falling. But again, he lost all of his power. So, as you can see that one goes through many, many tests, and finally Vishwamitra went further up into the Himalayas, another 1,000 feet, and began meditating. This time he was very determined not to be swayed by anything, and after much spiritual practice, many, many years, Lord Brahma appeared to him and made him into a Maharishi, a great Rishi. Now, Vishwamitra in his heart wanted to be a Brahma Rishi, which would be the same rank as Vashisht, the original kings. Lord Brahma read his mind, and he said that the only way you can become a Brahma Rishi is if you go to Vashisht himself and seek his blessings. So Vishwamitra went to Vashisht. Now, much of his anger had burnt out in this process, but he still has some traces left, and as he went to Vashisht's hut, he found some of the anger returning. And as he dwelt on the anger, it became a rage. He picked up a stone nearby, and the intent was to do some kind of harm to the Brahma Rishi Vashisht. Now, as he looked at the hut, he could see that Vashisht was in a conversation with his wife, whose name is Arundhati, and he could not hear what they were saying. As he went closer, this is what he heard. Arundhati, Vashisht's wife, was telling her husband, "But he has worked so hard and become so great. It is only fitting that you bless him." Vashisht replied, "Yes, I will bless him soon." So Vishwamitra was wondering who they were talking about. Arundhati continued, she said, "Are you going to make him a Brahma Rishi?" Vashisht said, "Yes, if he were to come here this very instant, I will give him my blessings." Vishwamitra has become great indeed. He has proven himself worthy. He was initially motivated by his revenge for me. He was sidetracked by lust, later on by anger, when he turned the celestial maiden to stone. And later on he was sidetracked by blind ego to show that he was great. When he tried to make the king Trishanku ascend to heaven in his body. But each time he returned to his spiritual disciplines, he did not give up. Even Lord Brahma himself was pleased with Vishwamitra and made him into a Maharishi. So it would be a privilege for me to make him into a Brahma Rishi. Now, as Vishwamitra heard these words, his heart melted. Tears came out of his eyes, started rolling down. He realized what he was about to do, and the last traces of his anger disappeared and melted. He threw himself in remorse at Vashisht's feet and confessed what he was about to do. Now, apparently Vashisht knew all this was going on, but it was a drama he was enacting. And at that time, a divine flame came out of the Brahma Rishi Vashisht and leapt into Vishwamitra. And Vishwamitra went into a very profound, deep inner meditation, and he heard the sounds of creation. And this is what he heard. This is what he heard. He heard, Om Bhur, Om Bhuvaha, Om Svaha, Om Maha, Om Janaha, Om Tapaha, Om Satyam Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Naha Prachodayat. He did not create the Gayatri Mantra, he just heard it as the sound of creation. And I know the story was a little bit long, but it's important to realize that had he not passed those tests, we would not have had the Gayatri Mantra we have today. So what I'm going to do, since we don't have the booklets as yet, is just going to chant. I'm going to chant the mantra a few times. And what I would like you to do is listen to it in meditation in preparation for the time when you get those Sanskrit mantra booklets, and you can also chant along with me. Om Bhur Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Naha Prachodayat. Om Bhurvasva Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Naha Prachodayat. Om Bhurvasva Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Naha Prachodayat. Om Bhurvasva Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Naha Prachodayat. Om Bhurvasva Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Naha Prachodayat. Om Bhurvasva Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Naha Prachodayat. Om Bhurvasva Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Naha Prachodayat. Thank you.
Karanji, you have again given to us a profound entering in to our heart of hearts and to the tens of thousands of years of history on this planetary home. You have reminded us that we have come from the Ancient of Days and that we intend to achieve our ascension in this life. So it is wonderful to be once again on the Atlantic Ocean, to recall our time when that continent went down. Where were we? What did we do? Where did we go? What have we done since then? Much has been accomplished in our lives. Perhaps in the old world things were better in some ways, and perhaps they were not as good. So today we look at our world as it is in this moment. We cannot stop time and space. We cannot stop the revolving of our planet, but we can enter into the secret chamber of the heart. We can enter into that secret chamber, balance the threefold flame, and realize that God lives within us now. we also realize that we can actualize and accelerate that manifestation within us. Let us explore our own inner identity and what is our actualization. I begin now this afternoon by addressing a question that some of our members and headquarters staff have recently brought to the fore. As many of you know, in the last 2 years, our church has been going through a re-energizing process. Some have expressed concern that our focus on being more professional and businesslike might be compromising our spiritual focus. Rest assured, this is not the case. We all realize that this transition wouldn't be a picnic. In many respects, what we're facing is similar to what Moses and the Israelites faced. God told Moses to lead the Israelites out of Egypt and to bring them to the Promised Land. Unfortunately, to reach the Promised Land, they first had to go through the desert. Suddenly, Egypt didn't seem so bad. We undertook the process of re-energizing in expectation of a better future for our staff and our members. Saint Germain directed our community to adopt the best business practices of the 1990s so that our community of the Holy Spirit might prosper and so that we could reach great numbers of people with the teachings of the Ascended Masters. When any organization wants to improve a certain aspect of its operation, it studies those who are leaders in that specific operation. I've come to realize that despite the changes we face, the best business practices of the 90s are extremely applicable and in sync with the spiritual challenges of the age. Furthermore, I see many organizations, secular, spiritual, and otherwise, not realizing that they are being left behind in a cloud of dust. Some of us are concerned, burdened, afraid, don't know where the organization is going. Where we are going is to the inner sanctuary of the heart. That place of the inner sanctuary of the heart is the place where we meet our Father, Mother, God, where we meet our Holy Christ Self. There we have no fear. We have the sense of inner triumph that we will make it, our church will make it, and our planet will make it. Let me give you an example as I read to you from the introduction of a business publication put out by Pritchett and Associates. It just arrived in the mail a week or two ago. It's called Fast Growth, a Career Acceleration Strategy. As you listen, I want you to apply these words to your own spiritual path. Remember, you can be a career son or daughter of God. Pritchett tells us, life comes at us like a bullet these days, fast and unforgiving. But these times are full of amazing possibilities for people who rise to the occasion. The pressing challenge is to get better, quicker. This new era demands more rapid responses, immediate adaptability, fast results. Above all, it requires a personal growth rate that can at least match the growing pace of change. We must speed up our adjustments to frequent career shifts and new work roles. How do we do that? We accelerate by the violet flame on every line of the clock and on the half lines. We must find a formula that helps pull far more of our raw potential into play. In other words, we can exceed what others are trying right now. We must figure out how to make a contribution that really counts. Only by applying ourselves differently can we deliver the kind of outcomes the world has come to expect. The skill sets that made us successful last year can leave us defenseless tomorrow. The education we thought we'd completed soon quits protecting our careers. Even a good base of experience provides little safety because it is so easily becomes outdated. Deep inside, we know something more is needed now. The situation calls for a powerful new strategy. We need a methodology for rapidly mobilizing ourselves to measure up against the career flashpoints we constantly encounter. The secret is accelerated personal growth. A deliberate, disciplined routine that produces dramatic performance gains. End of quote by Pritchett. There is a reason why I've used Pritchett's principles in my introduction to my lecture on Love, Wisdom, and Power in Action, Balancing the Fires of the Heart. Think about your life and your spiritual career. As Pritchett said, life is coming at us fast, yet it is full of possibilities. Deep inside, we know something more is needed now. Like those who are competing to get ahead in their chosen fields, we too need to apply ourselves differently. The situation calls for a powerful new strategy. The secret of accelerated personal growth is a deliberate, disciplined routine that produces dramatic performance gains. Each of us must figure out how to make a contribution that really counts. Do you believe that the fast pace of life is full of possibilities? Yes. Do you know deep inside that something more is needed now? Yes. Are you willing to apply yourself differently? Yes. Are you willing to seriously consider that your approach to spiritual success probably requires a new strategy? Yes. How many of you are looking for accelerated personal growth? A deliberate, disciplined routine and dramatic performance gains. How many of you are willing to do whatever it takes to make a contribution that really counts for you, for the organization, and for Saint Germain? Thank you. Let us begin with the understanding of how the fires of the heart are critical to your success and my success. And let us begin with our origin in the heart of God. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." So God created man in his own image, in the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. So we see that man and woman were created in God's image and likeness. What is the nature of this image and likeness? What does it look like? Do we change? Are we changing all the time? Do we see the lines of anger, or joy, or beauty, or sorrow? Do we know the ways of the world and the burdens that we must bear? All of these things play in our lives. Schofield's comment is that this image is found chiefly in the fact that man is a personal, rational, and moral being with a thinking, feeling, and willing personality. Throughout the ages, many sacred traditions referred to the divine within you and God's seed that is within us. They talk about the Atman, the Buddha nature, the inner light, the divine spark. All of us have it, but we need more of it. We need to know that it is there. We need to sense the intensity. We need to sense that intensity when we have pain within, when we have sorrow. We need to know the intensity that God is giving to us, because he's saying to us, you can make it, you can get there. So when you realize that you do have these elements of God already within you, and that they are moving within you, and that you can internalize and become one with that self, that universal self, that eternal self, you really begin to see that you are God's, and all of you are of the Most High. That's what Moses said. I have said ye are God's, and all of you are sons of the Most High. If we remember that, we will not walk around being doughboys and doughgirls made out of cookie cutters, but we will have the fervor and the fire to overcome all obstacles. The concept of your divine nature is not unique to the teachings of the Ascended Masters given through Mark Prophet and me, But over the years, the Ascended Masters have given us a detailed understanding of our divine nature, as well as a scientific approach to the ascension. Did you hear that? A scientific approach to the ascension. There is a scientific approach. It means daily decrees. It means daily service to God. It means being right with your fellow man and right with yourself and your family. The simple, beautiful things of life that we need to do so that we're on the right track. They have taught us that this divinity within us is a threefold flame of love, wisdom, and power. And they have taught us how to expand and balance that flame. We expand and balance it by nourishing it, by intensifying it, and by doing good works that help our neighbor. Outstanding among their teachings is Saint Germain's A Trilogy on the Threefold Flame of Life, published in the book on Saint Germain on alchemy. I won't review this today, but I will give a brief summary of the key points that relate to the importance of the balancing and expanding of your threefold flame. What you just heard from Karanjit shows a saga, an epic of the ages, that one tries and tries and tries again, and works and works and works, and ultimately the quote gods look down upon you, shine upon you, and say, this soul deserves to be beyond this level. I recommend this soul for a higher place and a higher purpose. Remember, any morning when you wake up, you could be that soul that God has chosen, that God has said, I have singled you out this day, like Job, like the prophets of the Old Testament. You never know when your day comes when God says to you, well done, thou good and faithful servant. I can't remember the mid part of this, but I will make thee a ruler of many. So God wants us to make us a ruler of many. And that is why we are gathered here. And if we don't know we are gathered here for this purpose, let us remember it, because God is waiting to pick the flowers, to bring those flowers to his heart. So I believe that many of us have not applied these teachings to the fullest extent possible, and may be missing the greatest gift of all, the empowerment that comes from a re-energized threefold flame. Yet this is what practical spirituality is all about. What I hope to accomplish today is to unveil to you the continuous thread through time and space, from your point of origin in God to your ascension in the light, and the practical steps you need to take right now, today, tomorrow, and in the years ahead to get where you are going, back to the great central sun. It begins with the understanding of the threefold flame of the Trinity that burns on the altar in the secret chamber of your heart. Let's start then with a basic definition. The threefold flame is called the Holy Christ flame, the threefold flame of liberty, of life, and the divine spark. Its three plumes resemble the fleur-de-lis, which the royal house of France adopted as its emblem in the 12th century. The fleur-de-lis, from the Middle French, literally lily flower, is a symbolic representation of the white lily. It consists of the three petals or leaves, the central one erect, the other two curving to right and left. The blue plume of your threefold flame is on your left. It embodies God's power. The yellow plume is in the center and embodies God's wisdom. The pink plume is on your right and embodies God's love. And the white base of the threefold flame is the fountain of the purity of the Divine Mother. The threefold flame of the heart is not balanced until it is united with the flame of the Divine Mother at the base of the spine. At that point, we are truly empowered. As Galahad said, my strength is as the strength of 10, because my heart is pure. What we, as God's creation, all have in common is a mighty I Am presence. How many of us walk down the street thinking about and talking to, musing with our mighty I Am presence, talking to our mighty I Am Presence as a friend and saying, look at what is happening in the world today. What can I do about it? What can I do about the burdens of my neighbor or people in far-off lands? Having that one-on-one relationship with God constantly 24 hours a day, and finally again coming to that place where you know your God is with you and will never leave you, and you will never leave him. The threefold flame is the same flame that burns in the heart of Alpha and Omega and in the heart of every ascended master. The only difference is its size, intensity, and balance. And that's the only difference between our current state and the full manifestation of our Christhood: size, intensity, and balance. The threefold flame is expressed in the quality of our heart. Quality. It is the expression of our Christ self. So you see, the seed of God in your heart is potentially equal to God. It's like that tiny mustard seed and the great tree that grows from it. And because we have this divine spark, we have the authority to command light. To command light. That is the authority God gave us. So we can command light, and light will fulfill our command. You can call to God at any time of the day or night, and he will answer you. But we all need to do it. We all need to do it. A few years ago, Jesus revealed that your divine spark bears the imprint of the presence of God within you. This means that the electronic blueprint of your I Am Presence is actually imprinted on your threefold flame forever. What a joyous gift. So don't think of your I Am Presence as beyond your reach, but realize that the imprint of your I Am Presence is right within your heart. This is one of the mysteries of the pulsating fire of the threefold flame. It is pulsating almost like a heartbeat, a regular heartbeat, pulsating. I shall read an excerpt from Linello's dictation of May 26, 1974. This is a very profound teaching that he gave to us the year after his ascension. In it, he explains the relationship of our core identity and how our use and misuse of free will has affected us. Linello said, the threefold flame is the core of your identity, the very core. It's like, in other words, the nucleus of an atom. It's the core of being. It's what holds us together, that core. And around that core, the Father, Mother, God has coalesced the energies which provide for your self-conscious awareness of God as spirit and of soul as your living potential to become the fullness of God in manifestation. Jesus and others who have walked the homeward path have become the fullness of the Christ by balancing the energies of power, wisdom, and love within the heart. In the beginning, when you were created in the plane of spirit, this flame was a trinity of God's consciousness. But after the descent into form and the subsequent fall from levels of perfection through misuse and the misapplication of the gift of free will, the aspects of the threefold flame no longer manifested in balance. With the loss of the balance of love, wisdom, and power came the loss of elements of the Christ consciousness. The Christ consciousness then receded to the level of the mediator, the Holy Christ Self, acting as a go-between between the imperfection of the outer evolving human consciousness and the perfection of the great inner God Self. The four lower bodies of mankind no longer mirrored the fullness of Christ's love, Christ's wisdom, and Christ's power. I bring to you this teaching, this fall conference, so that we can begin the new year with a profound understanding of our moorings, where we place our feet planted firmly upon the earth, and how we transcend ourselves after we have gone beyond the levels of misuse of the energies of God, as I have just described. And so man forgot that his outer consciousness was but the instrument of the inner fire and the inner equation that was and is the threefold flame. They simply forgot. Can you imagine that we forgot, or that people forgot? Forgetting shows a great loss of memory of the spheres of light, of the spheres of our Father, Mother God, where we came from. It says, and man forgot that his outer consciousness was but the instrument of the inner fire and the inner equation that was and is the threefold flame. That is how you are intended to be right now, here and now, with tremendous power. Tremendous power. Thus the spark of life that kept the flow of life moving in the temple foursquare, while unbalanced in its manifestation in the world of material form, had a counterpart in the Holy Christ Self, the real identity of man and woman. Within the heart of the Holy Christ Self there remained the perfect outpicturing of the threefold flame, as it was intended to one day manifest in the body temple. In past golden ages, men and women were aware of their spiritual powers. Do you remember the spiritual powers you had in past ages? Or perhaps when you are at sleep at night, do you dream of those levels of Atlantis or Lemuria or continents or spacecraft or whatever? Do you remember that you had an energy that you could use, that you are no longer using it today in your outer physical temple? That's why we're gathered here together. Because we know that there is a part of us, an essence of us, a reality of us, and rings upon rings of the aura that surround us that we don't use. We simply don't use it. So men and women were aware of their spiritual powers. They acted with honor, accountability, and compassion. They were able to see the threefold flame pulsating on the altar of one another's hearts. I guess in those times you couldn't hide anything. They watched as it raised the consciousness of all, but through free will, mankind changed. Earth reached a point where not a single person gave devotion to the God presence. And so it has been written in other manuscripts that I have seen that it was almost the case that mankind went on all fours because they did not have that manifestation of the threefold flame. That was the lowest level of consciousness of humankind that I know of. Enter Sanat Kumara, who went before cosmic councils and said, I will go and keep the flame of life on earth. Because Sanat Kumara's sacred heart was so intense, cosmic beings could arc through it sufficient energy to sustain life right in the midst of Earth's evolution's misqualification of energy. Gautama Buddha followed him, and in his office of Lord of the World, Gautama at the temple of Shambhala connects the threefold flame in our heart to the heartbeat of God enshrined in that temple. Now that we know and realize, we want to regain that connection, that flame within the heart of our Lord Gautama Buddha. He is closest to us and has worked the hardest to regain that flame in our behalf. I don't think we can imagine what life would feel like without that support. Similarly, through our own threefold flame, we can endow elemental beings with a Christ consciousness. As an additional note, the threefold flame is also focused in the etheric octave in the temple of the sun, the retreat of the Goddess of Liberty on the etheric plane over Manhattan. There she has a central altar surrounded by 12 shrines dedicated to the 12 hierarchies of the sun. Another factor we probably don't think about is that the length of our lifespan is related to the size of our threefold flame. The reason that the ancient prophets lived to be many hundreds of years was because they balanced their threefold flames and then expanded them. At the end of a lifetime, at the transition called death, the crystal cord is withdrawn. The threefold flame rises to the heart of the Holy Christ Self. When the soul is ready to re-embody, the Lord Mahachohan breathes the breath of life into the newborn soul, and the threefold flame is rekindled once again upon the altar of the heart. That threefold flame is the true light which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. Just imagine that, the miracle of the divine spark that God gives to us each time we hear that baby being born, that little cry, that little presence that lets us know that we indeed have another child. It is the miracle of the divine spark that allows us to think, to make decisions, to order and direct our lives, and to exercise our free will. This is the real seat of our consciousness. It's in the heart. Jesus' disciples spoke of this fire when they said to one another, "Did not our heart burn within us when he talked with us along the way while he opened to us the scriptures?" That was Jesus walking with two disciples. In these disciples, their whole hearts burned. Did not our heart burn? They didn't say just a little bit of our heart, but they said, didn't our heart burn? Because Jesus was walking side by side with them, and they felt that flame. You may not know it, but there are many on earth who do not have a threefold flame. Some once had a threefold flame but lost it by continually misusing the flame. For instance, through lifetimes of uncontrolled anger and uncontrolled misuses of the sacred fire in their chakras. In this day and age, the absence of a threefold flame does not disqualify anyone from the path as long as they meet the requirements of the Guru-Chela relationship. Since the coming of Jesus Christ, the light and the option of divine sonship has been transmitted through the messengers whom he has ordained through the Piscean dispensation. With the coming of our Lord came access to the Holy Christ Self, as well as the opportunity to have the threefold flame rekindled and to be re-endowed with the Holy Spirit. This is the inner meaning of Jesus' statement to Martha regarding the raising of Lazarus. He said, "He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live." Jesus had the power to raise the sacred fire, the Kundalini, on the altar of our beings, and he did so and could do so at will. Jesus has taught us that to those who believe on the name of the Son of God, Jesus Christ, and the Son behind that Son, and the messengers of that Son who have come and gone through the ages, there is given power to make them sons of God. There is given power to ignite in them the threefold flame. This is the power that was given to Peter. The keys of the kingdom are the keys to the causal body and the threefold flame of each and every son and daughter of God. Saint Germain established the keepers of the flame fraternity for those who wish to keep the flame of life on behalf of their fellow man. The fraternity was established not just to assist you in balancing and expanding your own threefold flame, but to assist those who are seeking from the Holy Spirit the reigniting of their threefold flame. You shouldn't worry about whether or not you have a threefold flame. If you have lost it, you can get it back through daily sacrifice, daily surrender, daily selflessness, and daily service. This is what brings us back to the feet of our Lord. Some of you remember the story of Pinocchio, which exemplifies the choice one must make to have or not to have a threefold flame. If you remember, at first Pinocchio was very naughty. He willfully and deliberately did not listen to Jiminy Cricket, who represented Pinocchio's conscience. When Pinocchio finally decided to diligently follow the path of the imitation of Christ, the divine spark was restored. He had to prove himself brave, truthful, and unselfish to become a real boy. He is rewarded with a real heart, symbolic of his becoming a real son of God. The path is essentially the same for all of us. Work hard to guard the light you have, expand it by your devotion, and serve God and humanity. Do your best. If you do your best, it will be an acceptable offering. And eventually, your daily offerings to God and your friends and humanity will pay off. In our current spiritual state, we are dependent upon the Ascended Master's sponsorship to maintain physical and spiritual balance. This is true of our church, our organization, and every individual in this room who calls him a member of this church. We must come to the place where we can sponsor the Ascended Masters rather than ourselves waiting to be sponsored by them. We need to seek that sponsorship within every chakra, within every element of our being. Let us remember this. This is a calling we have, and it is a calling we can reach out to. We can put our hand in the hand of the Ascended Masters and say, Lord, I will walk in your footsteps, and I will do the things that I know are right with God. Let us think about that, because I think we lean upon the Ascended Masters far too much, and we should turn around and give them the glory and God the glory of what they have done for us. As I said, the Lord of the world sustains the evolutions of earth by a filigree light, extending from his heart to every son and daughter of God. Our goal as disciples is to come to the place where our threefold flame is developed, to the point that we can sustain life and soul and consciousness on earth without the support of the Lord of the world, Gautama Buddha. You may remember Jesus on the cross, who cried out and said, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? The reason that Jesus said that was because Lord Maitreya, his great master, gave him the freedom to have that solo flight wherein Jesus could know and receive the great burdens of bearing the sins of the world for the entire Pisces dispensation. So when people accelerate on the path and are near that place, when they can have that initiation, God, Maitreya, Jesus, Sanat Kumara, Gautama Buddha may come to you, maybe to give you in those initiations in increments, and in other situations as a conclusion of one episode in one's life. For instance, when Jesus went through the crucifixion and when he finally concluded his ministry in the Middle East, he went to India and he remained there, and I think all of you know that. And so any of us at any stage or age in our lives can come to the realization that we can walk the earth as Jesus did and walk in the footsteps of his great teacher, Lord Maitreya. Until your heart flame can carry you, even in times of ultimate testing, you need the Guru. One of my favorite examples illustrating divine assistance is that of Corrie ten Boom. Her story can be found in Robin Kassarian's book, Forgiveness, A Bold Choice for a Peaceful Heart. As you know, Robin will be here this weekend to share with us her understanding on forgiveness, a key element in heart mastery. Robin writes, the following story of Corrie ten Boom offers another powerful demonstration of how forgiveness can be given even when we feel we cannot forgive of our own free will. Her heart assured her that everyone is forgivable, yet she couldn't seem to access what was needed for forgiving to be authentic. The story of Corrie ten Boom and her family is told in her book, The Hiding Place. Corrie, her sister Betsy, and the rest of her family played a key role in the Nazi resistance in Holland. The ten Booms were devout Christians who, because of their loving spirit, provided care, food, strength, and a place to hide for as many Jews fleeing Hitler's forces as they possibly could. Discovered by the Nazis, the entire ten Boom family was sent to the concentration camps for years. Like others, they were subjected to the most inhumane conditions. Corrie's father and sister died in the camps. Corrie survived, and despite having lived through the most horrendous of circumstances, went on to teach the message of faith in God's abiding love, as she and Betsy had done in the camps whenever they had got the chance. Corrie's story goes like this. It was at a church service in Munich that I saw him, the former SS man who had stood guard at the shower room door in the processing center at Ravensbrück. He was the first of our actual jailers that I had seen since that time. And suddenly it was all there, the room full of mocking men, the heaps of clothing, Betsy's pain-blanched face. He came up to me as the church was emptying, beaming and bowing. "How grateful I am for your message, Fräulein," he said. "To think that, as you say, he has washed my sins away." His hand was thrust out to shake mine, and I, who had preached so often to the people of Bloemendaal the need to forgive, kept my hand at my side. Even as the angry, vengeful thoughts boiled through me, I saw the sin of them. Jesus Christ had died for this man. Was I going to ask for more? "Lord Jesus," I prayed, "forgive me and help me to forgive him." I tried to smile. I struggled to raise my hand. I could not. I felt nothing, not the slightest spark of warmth or charity. And so again I breathed a silent prayer. "Jesus, I cannot forgive him. Give me your forgiveness." As I took his hand, the most incredible thing happened. From my shoulder along my arm and through my hand, a current seemed to pass from me to him, while into my heart sprang a love for this stranger that almost overwhelmed me. And so I discovered that it is not on our forgiveness any more than on our goodness that the world's healing hinges, but on his. When he tells us to love our enemies, he gives, along with the command, the love itself. That is the end of that quote, and you will be hearing from our speaker who will be speaking on many anecdotal materials, I trust, tomorrow in a 2-hour lecture. The reason this can occur is because our heart and that of the Ascended Masters are literally one and the same. As Jesus has told us, "In the West my heart is spoken of as the Sacred Heart, and yet what I have realized and brought forth in my heart is something which you can do also. Your heart is the Sacred Heart, for God has made only sacred hearts, no other. The threefold flame of your heart is that sacredness." So your capacity to progress, your mastery and adeptship all comes back to the balance, intensity, and quality of the sacred fire of the heart. Just how much does each of us love that we can lay down our life for our friend? Perhaps the best summary on balancing the threefold flame was given by Saint Germain in 1996. He begins with a reminder of the Buddha's teaching. The key to self-mastery is self-observation, and so it is in the balancing of the threefold flame. Your sensitivity to its plumes will enable you to determine when any one of the three is out of balance, and is thereby affecting the balance of the other two. We call these flames plumes because they resemble feathers. Study the qualities of the threefold flame, and take a note of which ones are lacking in your everyday experience, and which ones are perhaps more meaningful to you and better suited to your persona and your psyche. Start by energizing the strongest plume of the three and maintain the strength of that plume so that it can facilitate the strengthening of the two lesser plumes. You can tell when your plumes are not balanced by how strongly you feel God's power, God's wisdom, or God's love in your heart. If you do not feel the first, second, or third plumes of the Trinity pulsating in your heart, then you know that you must exercise the neglected attribute or attributes. For instance, if your blue plume is your strongest plume, then it is in command of the yellow plume as well as the pink plume. Maintain your strength in the blue plume and use it to shore up the yellow and the pink plumes. Then take action to increase the pink plume and the yellow plume, thereby attempting to establish equilibrium between the three, even while you fan the fires of the heart. If you have a tendency to withhold love from your adult self, from your inner child, or from others, go out and find those who need your love and give cup upon cup of love's elixir to all who will receive your love. Stay with this assignment until you feel the strength of God's love in your heart, and you know of a certainty that you have brought the pink plume to the level of the blue plume. Realize that it sounds wordy. What I'm reading to you sounds wordy, but jot it down, think about it, internalize it, because you must have the threefold flame balanced. That's the key. That's the key. Now, if you sense that you are not exercising the wisdom God gave you by teaching the illiterate to read and write, for instance, then consume your self-centeredness and bring the sunbeams of God's wisdom to those who need them most. Serve others selflessly. It's the key to the expansion of the heart, and especially the threefold flame itself. Serve others selflessly, and you will know the freedom of giving away the gifts of the Trinity. Your goal in this process is to balance the threefold flame so that the love of your hearts may also be equal to the intelligence of your mind and to the determination of the will of God that He sealed within you in the beginning. Invoke the threefold flame, embodying the power, the wisdom, and the love of the Trinity, for it is the ultimate means by which the light bearers of the world who have kept their lamps trimmed can right the wrongs of this civilization. Saint Germain is telling us that we need to right the wrongs of this civilization, because there are many who would do it but do not know how to right those wrongs. So it's great to keep on doing the things you're best at, but sometimes, somewhere, you will need to develop the things you are not best at, because if you just build on your strengths, your threefold flame will get more and more out of balance. If you're not sure where to begin this process, begin with love. Try it. TRY is the three-letter word symbolizing the threefold flame in your heart. If you don't exercise your heart chakra by sensitizing yourself to others and tuning into them and their needs, your heart chakra will become concave or sunken rather than convex. If you don't exercise your threefold flame, it will shrink. Your threefold flame will start shrinking. You have to take that threefold flame and expand it daily. To develop love, you need to give love. You need to prime the pump. Look around and see who needs love and go out and love them. Get involved in helping people and see how universal love returns to you. Forget about yourself, for there are a lot more people worse off than you who need your love. Call to Jesus to come into your heart and love people through you. Exert effort, be wise, take heroic risks to love more. I firmly believe the key to balancing karma is how much love you inject into what you are doing. Love is the great multiplier. And remember this, no association with this or any other organization will ever compensate for your absence of applying your heart flame to the pressing need of the hour. The reason we serve is because meeting people's needs requires work. That's why God gives us assignments one after another. Through work of heart, head, and hand, we can develop the heart chakra until it becomes the sacred heart of all saints. When your threefold flame is balanced, it begins to spin. It accelerates and becomes the resurrection flame throughout your heart. Only when the balance comes can you produce your own resurrection flame from your own heart. We've talked about balancing the threefold flame. What about expanding it? Well, you cannot expand your threefold flame until all three plumes are in balance. So you have to bring up the shortest plume. That's the one you want to work on the most. For instance, anger is your greatest enemy. That's the one you want to work on starting right now. And what do you do about it? You give love upon love upon love to those who are perceived to be your enemies, but who are not our enemies because we refuse to see them as our enemies. For to multiply an imbalance would only serve to increase the imbalance. Once it is balanced, your threefold flame can accelerate and expand. And by this expansion, you can quickly increase the impact you make on Earth's evolutions. The larger the flame, the more God and his archangels can release light through your heart. In most people, the threefold flame is about 1/16 of an inch high. Imagine that your threefold flame is 1/16 of an inch in height right now, providing you with the strength you have today. Now imagine how much more love you would have if your threefold flame were 1/8 of an inch, or 3/16 an inch in size. One threefold flame, balanced and expanded, can hold a balance for an entire city or nation. Let your threefold flame become an eternal candle in the night. Leave an eternal legacy. Today, with our knowledge of the Ascended Masters, we have a magnificent opportunity to rapidly and responsibly expand our heart fires. To me, that is probably the easiest thing that any of us could do, to simply expand the fires of the heart. One way to do this is through adoration to the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the Sacred Heart of Jesus. The path of the Immaculate Heart, the Sacred Heart, and the Ruby Ray is the path of balancing and expanding the threefold flame. A strongly developed heart chakra holds intact the fragments of the soul that you call back through the ritual of soul retrieval. I will be conducting that ritual this weekend, as you know. If you do not develop your heart chakra, there is a point beyond which you cannot go in life and multiply the energies of God within you. For you will not have the capacity to internalize the increase of the light that you have magnetized to your heart, and you will not be able to deal with the increasing return of karma. To reunite with God through the path of the ascension, 3 keys stand out. Balance your threefold flame, balance your karma, fulfill your divine plan. They are all interconnected. Fulfilling your divine plan and your sacred labor is integral to balancing your threefold flame. And balancing your threefold flame is integral to fulfilling your sacred labor. And you can't do either unless you balance your karma. Jesus has told us that balancing our threefold flame involves balancing our karma, because it is karma, our thoughts, words, deeds, and feelings that have caused the threefold flame to get out of kilter. So no matter how much you decree or meditate or invoke light to increase your threefold flame, you still need to balance your karma in order to balance your threefold flame. For example, Jesus said, "You cannot suddenly raise up the blue plume in proportion to the other 2 if you have not balanced the karma of the abuse of power and of the will of God, and if you have not understood the causes of your misuse of the first ray. And you can only gain an understanding of those causes if you will pursue the study of your psychology through a licensed practitioner. So here's another key to balancing the fires of the heart. Resolve the issues of your psychology. Resolve relationships." This past spring, as many of you know, the Ascended Master El Morya gave a karmic reading to each of our staff members who were 40 years old and older. He told them what percentages of karma that they had balanced, and he pointed out the major stumbling blocks to their balancing greater karma. This was a tremendous blessing, and it was also a wake-up call for many. I was surprised and concerned that many of my staff had, quote, gotten stuck somewhere in the mid-40 percentages of their karma, and that they had just simply stayed at that place, even though they knew if they had gone 10 more points up to the level of 55%, they could have secured for themselves the ascension, because anyone at this time can make their ascension, as you know, if they have balanced 51% of their karma. So I said to myself, why is it that they could not move beyond this middle point of 45%? And I came to the realization is that the karma becomes so heavy in our 40s that it is almost impossible to fight that good fight up this mountain that is almost going straight upward. And people because they didn't have the readings, because they were in the level of the 40% bracket, they did not realize how far they could go in this life if they would just work hard and get there. So when I told those who were in the bracket of the 40% to work hard and get there and get beyond the 51%, and when they also realized that they could do it and that they were certainly young enough to work hard and get past the 51%, then they have begun to really accelerate, really push, really charge, and really say, yeah, gee, I can make my ascension in this life. Whereas they were thinking, I suppose, that they weren't going to be able to make their ascension, which of course is poppycock, it's ridiculous, you can make your ascension. The other thing I'd like to say to you and all those on the patch is that El Morya does not intend to give these readings again and again for this reason, and that is, those of you who are in your 40s and younger do not need these life readings, because you have plenty of time to balance your karma and get past your 51% and well beyond your 51%. So I guess I'm using the platform to notify everybody that you won't be giving life readings, but you will know with an absolute surety that you can make your ascension if you try, and try. So El Morya gave those karmic readings because he wanted us to know it's your time to graduate. It's our time to graduate. It's the time for all of us to graduate, because El Morya says that this is the time that we have fulfilled our reason for being on earth, and it's time for us to move on in other dimensions and other levels and beyond our 51%. So please remember that when it comes to the violet flame, to your calls that you give every day. Remember every day that you have to balance some karma, and the more karma you balance every day, the closer you'll get to 51. 51% is not enough. You can lose it very easily. You can get cocky about it and say, oh well, now I've balanced my 51%, and then not do those violet flame decrees and not do the judgment calls and not do the Estrellas. So you have to keep on keeping on. So El Morya is saying it is our time, most of our time, to make our ascension, to graduate. So remember that. Keep that in the back of your mind, that El Morya has said it, and that I have given you this message from him. So this is what it will take to make your ascension, what I have just said. As I meditated on this and on the theme of this conference, I saw clearly that there is one thing and only one thing that will propel us to our ascension. And I came to this conclusion after a considerable amount of study as to what I would bring to you as my address today. And I realized that the one thing that is clearly the most important in our lives is that we must include in our lives the presence of heroism. We must be heroines and heroes. And until we get to that level, we really don't have 6 or 10 stripes, on our right arm. We don't exactly have the stripes that we should have. Heroism, heroes, have to do with those people who are willing to lay down their lives for their friends in a very, very profound way, such as the Corrie ten Boom family that I just read to you. People who go beyond the call of duty, do not have any care or fear for themselves, see the danger, see the burden, see what is happening to people, and without a thought goes out and takes hold of the situation, cares for people, lives for them, dies for them, does whatever has to be done to see that whether it's a city, whether it's a family, whether it's a civilization, will thrive. So I was summing up what I was going to bring to you, and this is my concluding remarks. I suddenly understood that love, wisdom, and power in action adds up to heroism. Heroism is the mark of the ascending soul. Heroes are what make the world go round. And to be a hero, you have to be proactive. Do you make things happen? Are your accomplishments practical and beneficial? Do you wait for opportunities to come your way, or do you go out and make your own opportunities to be love, wisdom, and power in action? As a matter of fact, there is no real love, wisdom, and power without action, just as there is no heroism without action. Well, you say, what is heroism? What does heroism look like? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? That is exactly what we'll be exploring together during our days, during this conference, as we celebrate the fires of the heart of our own Christopher Columbus, who by his courageous heart pioneered a new world for us all. These are my thoughts, and this entire lecture is more or less an introduction to everything that we will be doing in this conference, many things that can be stated better than I by all of our experts here. Basically, it came to me very profoundly from the Holy Spirit that if we are not willing to transcend ourselves, we may get home, yes, we may get there, but not with stripes, not with anything to show for ourselves, except we might have made it just because of our longevity, etc., whatever it might be. We need to leave this planet and know that we have had our victory, and because we have our victory, all light bearers of the world will have that victory because we show them our shining example. Thank you.